Okay, can everybody hear us okay? The microphones all working. I want to thank my panel for very kindly agreeing to have a debate with us this morning or lunchtime on a number of transfer pricing issues. It's a very broad discussion we want to have around some of the issues that we're seeing through from the OECD, particularly in the context of BEPS, which I know has been discussed quite a lot already today, and also what we're seeing a little bit around the practical aspects and how companies and various multinationals are struggling to comply with the ever increasing complexity that is transfer pricing. So starting with BEPS, just to the panel, and I think I'll start with you, Lee, if you don't mind. What are your thoughts on the applicability of the BEPS action plan in an African context? I mean, obviously it's come out of the OECD, which is essentially developing countries, but do you see the action plans as being relevant in an African context?
Can you hear me? Oh, you can now.
Introduce to the bag.
Yes. Well, I think the quick answer to your question is yes. And I don't say that from an OECD perspective in a sense, but from the consultations we've had with developing countries. So when we did the development working group paper that I mentioned this morning, we've held 4 regional consultation events, one in Latin America, in Colombia, one in Southeast Asia, in Korea, one in Africa, which was actually run by ATAF, which was held here in Johannesburg, and one in Paris through CREDAF, which is the Francophone speaking countries. And what we did was ask those countries, the countries attending those events, whether they considered the BEPS actions were relevant for them. And we tried to get them to narrow down those to which were the highest priorities. And actually that was quite challenging because they actually said they thought virtually all of them were. But essentially the main ones that came out of it as being highest priority were Action 4 on interest deductibility, Action 6 on treaty abuse, Action 7 on permanent establishments, the 3 transfer pricing value ones, 8, 9 and 10, and transfer pricing documentation 13. So they saw all of those as being highly relevant to Africa, with the added caveat that the feeling was that when they are able to address those issues, some of the other actions will become more relevant to them.
Okay. And Jeanne, just from a business perspective, do you see that the action plans in their current form are relevant, or would you like to see a little bit more sort of adjustment or tweaking to a more African context?
Oh, Karen, that's a tough one, I guess. I think maybe just my view, our experience in Africa, obviously, I mean, we've almost got the UK, so being in the position that we are, we've had experience with our very experienced tax authorities that have been doing TP for 20 years. Then we have South Africa, which is probably somewhere in between, ever since I've started, 10 years plus. And then we've got Africa, where it's brand new. So you're dealing with 3 different levels of sophistication. And everyone is constantly playing catch up to the, to the leaders, the UK and the US that have been doing this for many, many years. And I think, given our experience with a lot of the African legislation that's coming out, where they get to pick and choose UN versus OECD, and there's not always the clarity that we want, I think I see the relevance of BEPS in being almost a copy and paste where it gives them additional information. And I think as a taxpayer, I don't really mind. At least there's a consistent level of information. But where I do see some differences, and it's something that Michael alluded to earlier, it's in the domestic, the devil's in the detail in the domestic legislation. And I think our concern is that the applicability of BEPS will be a pick and choose. When it works for us, we choose it. When it doesn't work for us, then we look at something else. And I think that's always